Welcome back, baseball family. We have a return guest for the first time ever on the show, our friend Michael Ceely, friend of the show. Welcome, Michael. How are you today?
I'm great. I'm down here in sunny Naples, Florida, without allergies. There's not as much pollen in the air as there is there up in your part of the country. So doing okay.
Might need to make a visit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could stand it. So, Michael, as a reminder to all of our listeners, he's a high performance coach and he hosts the Sports Psychology podcast as well. So, since he's been on the show before, he got a rundown. We have a different game we're going to play with him today. So, Michael, we're going to have you see if you can identify these minor league teams based on their logos. We have 5. Okay, so here we go. Here's the first one.
Yeah. Something with a cougar. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know that one. Yeah.
So I chose this one because you're a Giants fan, right?
Yes.
So this is the Sacramento River Cats. They are the AAA affiliate of the San Francisco Giants.
Okay.
Okay, number 2.
I like the character. It's like some sort of an apple or something. Yeah.
Yep.
Or yeah. Yeah, no idea.
This is the Fort Wayne Tin Caps. They are the high A affiliate of the San Diego Padres.
Okay.
Based on Johnny Appleseed.
But isn't that hilarious?
I love that logo. It's one of my
pretty
favorites.
Original, I gotta say.
It really is.
Yeah. And this is my absolute favorite right here. I have this hat.
Okay. So I don't know, Pirates or something, right? So
right. They're the single A affiliate of the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Okay.
This is the Bradenton Marauders.
Marauders, okay.
Yeah.
Slightly different from a pirate, right? More of a marauder. Okay.
Right. Yeah. They're actually doing, I was on their website earlier and they're doing a Margaritaville night on the 20th. So I thought that was pretty neat.
Sweet.
Coming from the son of a parrot head. All right. Next one.
Sure. Some sort of bee.
Yep. Nailed it.
That's the name.
Nailed it. Yep.
Okay.
They're the bees.
So this is the Salt Lake Bees. They are the AAA affiliate of the LA Angels.
Okay.
And this one is another one of I'd say this is a top 5 team name for me. This one right here.
Wow. Okay.
Don't overthink this one.
Don't.
The M, yeah. Boy. Jeez, I don't know. No idea.
This is the Modesto Nuts.
Modesto Nuts.
They're the single affiliate of my Seattle Mariners.
Okay.
Like I said, he ran me through those, and I was like, Salt Lake Bees? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely some original logos and characters there. That was entertaining. Yeah.
They are. Yeah, that's part of the fun of it is that we don't expect anybody to get them, and we just like to show them off, and it's a good time. So. Nice. All right. So we had a few things we want to talk about, but Brig brought up something last night while we were talking that I thought was fascinating about how lately in Major League Baseball there's just been a slew of injuries, right? All these pitchers going down with Tommy John, and I was curious, what is the psychology or the mental approach to like how would you help a pitcher? It's like injury seems inevitable, right? You're going to miss a year of time because you're going to have Tommy John at some point. When it is, we don't know, but it's going to happen. Like, how do you approach the inevitability, if I could speak, of an injury?
Well, I mean, there's like a step before that. So if I'm working with a player, like with a pitcher, or really any player, the injury is part of sports, period. Like you're just in your career, you're going to get some sort of an injury. It could be super minor, it could be major. And having that conversation beforehand, getting prepared for it, like, okay, what's going to happen when you get injured? Obviously, you don't want people to get injured, but you have to have that conversation before something happens so that you're psychologically prepared for it. And thinking about that too, like in your contract and how you manage your money and everything like that. The more of like a cushion or parachute you have if that injury happens, the more psychologically resilient you're going to be during that injury. It's like, okay, I prepared for this. I have some money set aside. I have my support system. I'm going to get through this. So there's a lot of like proactive planning. Again, you don't want to plan on getting injured, right? and maybe baseball players are superstitious. So like, I don't want to jinx it. It's like, well, dude, you're probably going to get some sort of an injury, either, sliding the base or something, so just up front, having a plan, almost like insurance, right? Like what's going to happen when my roof gets hit by a windstorm or something. Like you have to have those plans in your mind beforehand. And that really reduces the stress, because then when you're injured, you go, yeah, well, I was already thinking about this. I'm going to get through it, as opposed to I'm devastated. My career is over. What do I do? You should have been thinking about what to do, like when you get injured. So that's like the first conversation. But if it does happen, it's a lot about just routine. So, you have your standard routine when you're actively playing. You want to get another routine set up. So even if you're like, the doctor says, don't get out of bed, you want to be doing something. You want to have like a daily routine to keep your sanity and change it up and stay busy. The worst thing is just ruminating in your head when you're injured. So I would like instill a new routine for the player. I get them socializing more. People tend to isolate when they're injured. A little bit of depression can set in. So you want to just prescribe like socializing, maybe some travel, maybe some really creative workouts with different parts of your body, and just keep that routine. So that's how they would get through it. That's kind of what I would prescribe. Yeah.
And so you spoke about superstition. I mean, obviously that's a huge part of baseball culture.
Yeah.
And players really are superstitious.
Yeah.
As the players are seeing everybody kind of go down, like it's one pitcher called it a pandemic, right? Because it seems to be touching every team, and Brad put it well with inevitability. When you're talking to a player, is there a way you can kind of get in front of that, like the superstitious side, like it's sweeping across the league, something like that? Am I making sense? I don't know if I'm
Yeah. No, I get it. So like the less physical the sport is, or the less sort of like aerobic the sport is, the more the superstitions, the more in your head you are, like golfers, baseball players. It's a way to
interesting.
Because it's like you have more time to just ruminate. Like your head gets in the way, right? So
that makes sense.
The brain's job is to control and problem solve. It's like a computer that way. So even if there's not a problem, the brain will make something up. Like, oh, there's a pandemic of injuries. No, there's not. Like, you just have to look back statistically, and maybe it's like a little bit higher, or maybe it's even the most ever. But like, how much higher is it than the last year that injury record was set? Probably not that much. So just like a rational conversation, say with baseball players, oh, I'm going to get injured next because everyone else is. It's like,
right.
Well, no, like let's have a rational conversation. And the way to do that is to actually look at data. So like I just said, like, is this pandemic of injuries, increased by 400%? No, of course not. Right. It's like probably an uptick, and it's within the realm of, statistical anomalies. So there's not really a trend. It just looks like that. So having just that rational conversation with the player, like, and just challenging them, like, well, is it really a pandemic? Are you really going to hit? What evidence do you have that you're going to get injured next? Well, none. Well, this other player did, and he's better than me. Okay. So let's look at the tendons between your arms. Like, that's what we're really talking about. Right. So just really breaking it down and challenging the player just rationally. And then they kind of get into that habit of disputing their own irrational thoughts in their head. And
do you lead them down that road for them to dispute it themselves, right?
Yes. So that I will, I'll say to them, well, what would you have to believe to think that there's an actual pandemic and you're going to get hit next with an injury? Well, I'd have to believe that there's some sort of a magical fairy that does that to me.
Right.
That's kind of the only explanation. And like, also like, okay, how could you prevent that? Well, I'd warm up better. I'd do this, that, and the other. So it's really just engaging them in like a safe conversation about just their rational thoughts in their mind. And that can be really helpful, because it's really a skill. Like, rational thinking is a skill. And it is, in the context of baseball, there are a lot of players who are superstitious. So that is kind of infectious. That mindset and that kind of thinking is kind of infectious. But if you get them talking with a psychologist, it's a different dynamic. You're not talking to a teammate, you're not talking to your coach or whatever, like you're talking to a professional, and you can dispute the irrational thoughts, and it can really be helpful to have that conversation.
How do you keep them from subconsciously like throttling their performance, right? Is it just getting in and having that conversation of being like, if you go at 90%, you're more likely to get hurt than you are going on 100%. Is it a kind of conversation like that? Or is it because like they talk about in football, like you can't play football at half speed. If you play football at half speed, you're definitely going to get hurt. At 100%, you're less likely to, I don't know. It's an interesting thing with football. Brig understands it better than I do, I'm sure. But at the same time with baseball, it's like you have to throw 100% as a pitcher or you'll end up in AAA tomorrow. Right? So it's like, do I throw 100% risk injury or do I throw 90% and maintain or still risk injury? Like, how do you have that conversation with somebody that's like, no, like you have to do your best because, like you said, injuries are going to happen in sports. It's just the inherent risk of playing. Like, is that the kind of the way you go with that? Kind of the approach?
Well, like you said, are they throttling their performance so that if they have a regular routine that works, where they have a warm up that really works, and they've avoided injury doing that, or they pitch a certain number of innings and they're used to that, and so it's like really looking at what has worked in the past. It's like, well, stick with that plan. Why would you throttle just out of fear, right? So that's the conversation I'd have with them. Again, that like, what evidence do you have that you're going to get injured if you continue to play like you've always been, pitching how you've always been pitching? Well, none. Okay, well, great. So keep double down on what's been working, right? Like don't throttle your performance. Now, if you can look back to specific evidence in the past where they were overdoing it, here's when I got injured. Okay, well, don't do that again. Make sure that you have this routine. It's really all about the routine, right? So like if you skip a warm up or something, that's probably going to really up your chances of getting injured, right? If you're throwing tons of fastballs, like that's going to up your, if you don't generally do that in the game, like you want to not throw too many fastballs, right? So it's like, that's not throttling. That's just being smart. Right.
That makes sense. Yeah, because like you mentioned that, and like looking back over the years, like I remember when I got hurt playing baseball, I was like at the time I was like, I can't figure out what the heck happened, And then looking back, I was like, oh, because I was stretching on my own rather than having somebody else tell me like these are the 10 stretches we do, right? That like I got out of the routine and I skipped one or two of them, and that ended up being the end of my shoulder. So that makes a whole lot of sense to stick to the routine because you were healthy when you were doing this, and then you were doing this and you weren't. So that makes perfect sense to me. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
that sort of thing. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, like, a part of it too is just kind of having the empathy and normalizing players' fears. So yeah, I see why you would want to throttle your performance. You don't want to get injured. That's good. It's like good that you're thinking that way, but let's be smart about that. So I just wanted to say that, like, it's good to kind of validate and normalize that kind of fearful thinking. You're human. You want to avoid the injury. So
yeah, that makes sense. Go ahead.
My question was, what things do you see that are maybe more common that result in a change of routine? Are there common denominators that you see with athletes, like when their routine does change? Why?
Yeah, it can happen with like younger athletes who maybe are going to a new team and they put all their faith in a trainer, and they don't listen to their gut, where they'd be like, okay, I feel like this is a wrong routine for me, and I'm not going to push back against the trainer or the coach. So that's the things, like, athletes, listen to your gut. Like if you have a routine that works and you have someone else coming in saying you need to do our routine, sure, try it. But if it's not feeling right, like, you're not going to get probably kicked off the team for not following a specific routine. I mean, it depends on the team, but I just say listen to your gut. Like what works. Especially for the younger players, like, you don't have to obey everything that's commanded to you. And so I would just say that, like, listen to your gut. Like if it's feeling wrong, it's probably wrong.
And that makes sense because, like, when Trevor Bauer first broke into the league, he had this routine, and everybody's like, "What the heck is this guy doing?" It's like, but it's
Yeah.
worked for him. It's gotten
Yeah.
him to this point,
Right.
right? And Logan Gilbert with the Mariners, like, he has this bag full of tools that he uses to warm up, and there's like, "What do you have in there?" He's like, "Oh, it's just different things to help me warm up." And like I said, it's gotten him to this point, so why
Right.
mess with it now?
Right.
And these guys have been healthy, right?
Mhm.
That they haven't had problems up to this point. So, like you said, it's worked. So stick with it because different things work for different guys.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. It's just having the courage to push back. If they want you to, if you feel like you're overextending yourself, give that feedback to your manager and like just speak up. Like that's part of the process. Like players can push back, and if you're feeling peer pressure from your teammates, like again, like what works for you is going to work for you. Don't doubt yourself. Listen to your gut.
yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
So they've shortened the pitch clock again this season, and they've got two fewer seconds than they had before. And the guys that we've heard from have said that this is disrupting their routine. So with the emphasis you're placing on routine, you step up onto the mound, you're gonna prepare to pitch. And a lot of guys have a systematic approach to every pitch, not just every at bat. Do you think that the couple of seconds is making that big of an impact in the routine guys bring to the mound?
Probably, yeah. I mean, yeah, it's like if you're forced to change it definitely would have an impact. And I think how you approach that, how you adapt to that is you can be resentful of that. You could say, this sucks. I hate this. I wish it were different. The other way is, I don't know if you know this this podcast guy named Jocko Willink. He's got a great podcast. Yeah,
for sure.
So he has this this philosophy. He calls it good, just good. It's like, oh, 2 less seconds, good, great. Like, challenge me more. What else you got? Like that kind of an attitude. It's like, oh yeah, okay, great. Give me even less time. Let's bring it on, right? If you have that approach, then you will adapt. You will change your routine. If you're stuck and you're like, I'm resentful of this, I hate this, like you're going to be tense, you're going to be off your game. The better attitude is that good, great. MLB, like bring on some more stupid rules. Let's go, right?
Right.
So that's the way to handle it. Yeah.
That actually makes perfect sense because I've heard people talk about like professional athletes. One of the things, like with especially at the NBA with load management, the attitude that I've heard is like, if you can't play 70 games in a season, you're not an NBA player, right? Like if you need load management to limit your games to 55 or 60, like you don't have the body to play in the NBA right now or anymore or ever. And it's kind of the same thing with Major League Baseball. I think that you bring that up, that I think that the owners and the rules committee, all of them, they come and they say, if you're a big league pitcher, you should be able to handle 15 to 18 seconds with 18 seconds with runners on instead of 20. That if you really are the best in the world, you can adjust. That you're competitive enough that you can, like, yeah, I can handle it. Why can't you handle it? Like that makes perfect sense to me. That would be the approach that could be the approach among pitchers, the owners, and everybody in that realm. That makes perfect sense to me. I like that a lot. That's really good. It's really good.
Really good. But I do think it's relevant to acknowledge at least the fact that 2 seconds can make a significant difference. And it may be person to person, player to player, but based on how resilient they are mentally, you're saying that 2 seconds can be truly important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So while we're talking about pitchers for a minute, we had talked about how we wanted to talk about pitcher versus batter psychology, which is fascinating to me because I was coaching 10-year-olds a few years ago, and one of them, and I'd actually ask all of them, like, where are you looking when you're at the plate? And most of them were like, oh, I don't know. And I was told, like, look at the logo on his hat so that when the ball comes up, you can spot it. And one kid was like, I like to look the pitcher in the eyes. I was like, well, don't do that. Like, what would you say is like the best approach, I guess, mentally, as far as like a batter being at the plate? Like, man, because it's tough. It's one-on-one, right?
Yeah, I mean, and generally the pitcher has the advantage. They're throwing a really, really fast ball.
They've got a bullet, and you got to try to hit it.
And there's the catcher's there to team up on the batter too. So yeah, the batter's at the disadvantage. But that said, if we're going with batter psychology, I remember, so I'm a big fan of Reggie Jackson. I have a Reggie Jackson story too, which I think I told on the last podcast, but like it was after
Oh
we cut out.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Tell us. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll start with that because I think his philosophy as a batter was awesome. So he was known as Mr. October, the slugger. He said, I don't remember the exact quote, but he said, when you're up to bat, it's you versus the pitcher. And he says, like, I am there to destroy the pitcher. And he would give him like the death stare. So I think there is that initial moment, like how you approach the plate, how slow you walk, how fast you walk to kind of psych out the pitcher. And you do look him right in the eye, like, I'm going to steal your soul. Like a little bit of that is good.
Wow.
Yeah. So that kind of thing. And then after that, you let your body take over. You don't overthink it. Like your body knows how to watch the ball. Like if you overthink, like, okay, I'm going to look at his hat, or I'm going to look at his glove, or this, like you already know what to do based on your experience. And maybe you can get some other tips from like a batting coach or something like that. But like, I think the best thing is to go up and face the pitcher and just give him like a death stare, right? Like I'm gonna line drive, like I'm just gonna destroy you. That's really helpful. So my Reggie Jackson story, I was actually trying to find the game on YouTube, like in archives, but it was I believe it was in 1981, and so I grew up in Wisconsin, loved the Brewers, and it was Yankees and the Brewers, and Reggie was just hitting home every time he got up to bat. He hit a home run. And the Milwaukee County fans back in the 80s were pretty rowdy. Old concrete stadium, county stadium. Yeah. They had Bernie Brewer, which was the mascot. Now is like a caricature with like a big stuffed head and stuff. But back in the old days, it was an actual local drunk guy who would actually slide down this slide whenever the Brewers hit a home run into a real vat of beer.
So funny.
He was just like this local drunk guy named Bernie, and they just like sent him down. Right? So like you can't do that today, right? Because that's irresponsible or something. But anyway, so that was the whole context. It was like 1981, and I was there, and I was 10 years old or something like that. And so Reggie's getting up each time, and he's knocking it out of the park. And the fans are booing him like crazy. And they're actually chanting, Reggie sucks, like that really, really loud. And I was chanting it too.
Yeah.
And so it's like his third at bat. And the chanting is so loud, Reggie sucks, that he had to step out of the batter's box and just kind of like, he's like looking up at the crowd. And it was surreal how loud it was. And he just kind of smiled at the crowd and got back in. And the next pitch cracks it again. But I swear that the crowd, the vibration of the crowd did something to that hit, because it went to the center field light pole right below the paint line, which is, I guess, like a ground rule double.
Yeah.
And he got to second, and the crowd was so happy. And he like just like saluted the crowd. It was awesome. Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've talked to guys who love that stuff. Like I remember when we were in college, I was talking to one of the basketball players, like, man, that atmosphere. I was telling him about the atmosphere at an away soccer game. I was like, dude, it was crazy. They were brutal on the players. He's like, oh, I love that. Yeah. How does a guy get to that point? Because like I loved the noise when I was playing, and I often didn't hear like the negative side of it. It was all just that noise to me when I was playing. But I don't know how I got there, right? Like, how do you help a guy get to that point where he can just drown it all out?
Yeah. Again, it could be like that Jocko Willink philosophy of like, good, like, boo me louder. I think Reggie said something like, fans don't boo losers.
Yeah, he did. Yeah,
something like that, right?
They don't boo nobodies, I think is what.
Yeah, that's what it is. That's what it is.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah. So it's just kind of flipping it, going like, okay, yeah, bring it on. What else do you got? Like that lean in mentality of like, okay, they're booing me, they're calling me lefty or whatever they're doing, and you're just like, great, bring it on, and use that as fuel. So I think that's really the way to do it. If you try to say like, okay, well, here's how you drown out the crowd. Focus on your best game, and you're kind of fighting the inevitable loudness of the crowd. Like that's going to be really difficult. You got to utilize it. You go, great, more, make it even louder. And that, I think, is the best way to do it.
That's really interesting. And the pitcher versus batter relationship, it is one-on-one, but it's at a distance. When I was boxing, I asked my boxing coach, I said, I've got so much anger or frustration. How much should I bring in the ring? And he told me that you ought to have a little fanny pack full of, come at me, right? Because I'm going to take you down. He said, and then when you need it, it's there, but don't lead with that. Is it a similar approach to the pitcher or the batter, or is that emotional element of it detrimental to their performance? What would you say to that?
Well, it's interesting. So like if your boxing coach said that, did you find that helpful to like not, come out there with your with fire, like leave a little bit in the fanny pack, as it were?
Yeah, I did, because boxing for me became a very cerebral experience, where you're paying attention to 7,000 things all at once, and where's my toe, and how's my elbow, and then it has immediate consequences, right?
Yeah, right.
Which is fabulous. I love that.
So it's the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, you're playing chess against yourself and your opponent, and then the consequences are brutal and fast acting. So, but I feel like it's a little different with baseball. Does the emotion help or hurt, or does it depend on the player?
It really does depend on the player. There's a lot of different psychological profiles. So like not everyone had the mentality of Reggie Jackson, for example. So yeah, I think it's pretty individual. So like maybe your boxing coach kind of got a read on you, like, okay, Brig comes out swinging with everything. We got to dial him back, right?
Yeah.
So it takes a good coach to kind of notice what the style is. But if we're doing like pitcher versus batter, and again, the pitcher's pretty much always in the advantage unless he's, actually afraid of a batter. So it's kind of like, okay, so as a pitcher, how do you set the tone? Like, do you want to intimidate the guy by kind of like high and inside? Do you want, like, what do you want to do? So the pitcher kind of sets the tone, but the batter can also just set that tone by stepping up and with the posture and the death stare and stuff like that, and maybe not swinging at the first pitch. So yeah, it's pretty individual, but the emotions, you don't want to. It's that fine line between I'm going to steal your soul, I'm going to give you a line drive, like a very directed, focused kind of anger, and a frustrated anger. You're like you get 2 strikes and you're just like, oh my God, you're almost fall over swinging. If you get angry you're probably going to strike out. So you need to maybe step out and kind of calm yourself. So it's really managing the focus of your emotions. Frustrated anger is bad. Directed anger is better. And I say anger, that might sound bad, but like it works. It works. Yeah. I actually worked with a baseball team in San Francisco, a high school team. And I did this, my master's thesis on this particular topic. And I said, give me a couple of players who are good, generally good batters, but maybe they get into slumps or they have some kind of get psyched out. And so I had them like just playing around with them, like, okay, during a batting practice before a practice at the high school, pretend that you're going to actually like kill the pitcher with the with the baseball. And I got them a little bit angry, in a healthy way. I didn't, turn them into monsters, but they turned it. I mean, immediately turned it around. Like I told this one kid, he hit a line drive right away at the pitcher, and they had like a cage there. So it hurt, but like just that edginess, right? Like it's because a lot of batters will turn it inward, like turn the frustration inward. They'll go, "What's wrong with me?" I need. If you turn it outward and even if you swung a swing and a miss, and you just look at the pitcher again and look at him like, "Hey, is that all you got? Like, bring it on. Like, directing that frustration outward, I think is pretty healthy when you're in that situation as a batter. Yeah.
I had that work with the 10-year-olds I was coaching. One kid was the most timid swinger I've ever seen in my life. And I was like, do you ever get angry? He's like, well, yeah, sometimes. Like, get angry at that baseball, man. Like, take it all out on that baseball. And he started killing the ball. I was like,
Yeah.
that's amazing. Yeah, it's crazy how just a small adjustment, flip of the switch, and being able to channel that, because you see big leaguers who it's like once they get 2 strikes, they're done. Because and I feel like it's because of the way they react after that 3rd strike.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, if you get him 1 strike or no strikes, he's fine. But once he gets 2 strikes, he's toast because he's so in his own head.
Right.
And one of them, I don't get to name names, but he's former Mariner, current Brave. Most people know who that is. But but yeah, you see it and you know what's going to happen. So one of the other things we had talked about was the difference between an off-season, preseason, and regular season mindset. Some guys say they like to have the same routine 365 days a year. I don't know how that would work because that feels like burnout waiting to happen. But what are some things that you help guys do, like to stay ready during the off season and going into the preseason?
Yeah, it is. It's individual. There's some people who do need that break, and so you got to know the psychology of the player. But generally speaking, I think it's good for everyone to have a break, and even like kind of force a break in the off season. Switch it up. It gives you time to reflect. You're not going to get totally out of shape if you take a couple weeks off.
Right.
It's probably going to be better for you. It gives you perspective. Makes you think about your family and other things going on in your life. But then there are people who, like no days off, like that's their thing, and they need that routine. So it's kind of individual, and maybe those individuals are not prone to burnout. So as a coach, you gotta know like if someone's prone to burnout or not. I think that's the starting point. Yeah.
What about a kid? How do you carry the momentum of like, it's like I have a 9-year-old who he just finishes his spring baseball season, and there is a lot of positive momentum with him. He had a great season, hit a couple home runs, and he's like, Dad, I'm loving this. Like, yes, then let's continue to because he wants to get better. Like, what's the best way to approach the mental side of him of like, let's continue learning without like pushing it too hard and possibly leading to burnout? Is there a mental approach that I could take with him?
Sure. I mean, that's great that he's so enthusiastic about it, right? And
I love it.
Yeah, if it still has that fun vibe to it and that enthusiasm, keep it going. Like put him in a camp or whatever it is, and do some extra practice. You can, especially the kids, you can see signs of burnout with older players. They tend to hide it more. They tend to be more stoic about it. But kids, like you're gonna notice pretty quickly. They're gonna be posture is gonna be bad. They're gonna be obviously not into it. So any sign of that with like really younger player, just you want to either give them a break or want to give them a pep talk or just kind of chill them out and make it more about the fun as opposed to being so serious. So
yeah, my girls, one of them, her favorite thing about softball is the designs she creates in the infield dirt. Like that's
Right.
She doesn't want to be doing. She wants to hit the ball, and she wants to be an artist.
Nice.
Get her
so I've got to
break.
focus on the fun.
Yeah, for younger players, it's got to be fun, and it's so much about the coach. Like we've all seen the terrible like little league coaches who, for whatever reason, they just like have issues and they're kind of mean to their players, or they're almost getting a fight or something like that. Or even like parents, like you have maybe a dad who like didn't make it in baseball and takes it out on his kid and forces him. Like it's terrible to see that stuff. So especially the kids, you want really good leadership, you want healthy leadership, and as a parent, like don't be afraid to bring up an issue if the coach is really bad. Like so
it makes sense.
We don't have that problem where I'm at, which is really, really good.
That's good.
That is really good.
Yeah.
So what about going preseason to regular season? Season just started. Like we're not even a full month into the season yet. And so I'm always curious because it seems like in spring training, especially this year, I watched it a lot where teams had gone really easy with their starters and then really ramped them up at the end. Is there something to like, okay, today we're going game day routine and you start doing that like a week before the regular season starts, or do you save that for the regular season?
It's a great question. At least my mindset is like ramp it up early, like come in with some fire and momentum. I think it's like good for morale to do that. It just really depends on the vibe of the team, the philosophy of the coach. However, yeah, I don't think there's any really right or wrong way because it is so early. But clearly, you don't want to be, getting injuries in preseason in the first month of baseball.
Right.
So I think that's really the buffer you want to be thinking about. Like, let's play maybe a little on the conservative side because it is a long season, just in terms of like avoiding injury. But there is something about getting that momentum going quickly too. But it's such a long season. So I think I'd say like start more conservative.
That makes sense.
That makes sense.
Yeah, because and this is really my last question I have about like the preseason to the regular season, because I was watching my Mariners during the preseason and everything was so smooth that like they lost a bunch of games early, they turned things around in the preseason, and as you like started ramp guys up and things got a lot better, started winning games, guys were playing well, and then it was like the last preseason game was so great, and then the first one, weird stuff immediately started happening.
Okay.
What is it? Is it like opening day jitters? Is it like, oh, this actually counts now? Is it what is it why is it stuff like that happens? Is there a mental reason for that?
So you're saying weird stuff happened, like they just started playing like amateurs?
Like the defense was so good. Like there were certain guys who it's like, man, he looks really good defensively early, and then it was like game one, somebody gets hit in the head with a throw to home, and then there's a ball takes a weird hop, and then like I don't know, that it's just like stuff that's routine all of a sudden is not anymore.
It's just folly at that point. Like it's
it was and literally game one, like somebody on a routine play got hit in the back of the head with a ball, and I was like, this doesn't happen or hasn't happened,
Right. I mean, it could be an anomaly, but if like a bunch of that's happening like in one game, is that what was happening?
Well, and like a team that's normally really good defensively was not very good for a while, right?
Yeah, I mean, it just sounds like, opening game jitters, basically. So there should have been some sort of a conversation. I mean, maybe there was, but like, it is just the first game, guys. It's like, don't worry about it. Or like, let's come out on fire, like whatever happens. And putting in that context, like it's so early. Like that's the kind of game where you want to just be playing loose and not even care if you win or lose. So maybe there was extra pressure. Like we don't know what the pep talks are going on in the background, but that does seem kind of weird. So it sounds, I would like blame that on the manager or whoever's in charge. Like there's that is kind of weird that they would kind of fall apart like that. So
yeah, I agree. Okay, my last question for you is: there are certain teams that are clearly not trying to be good. We can call it tanking, you can call it preparing, bridging to the next, rebuild, whatever.
The next city, if you will.
Yeah, the next city. If you're working with an individual player who happens to find themselves in that situation where the front office doesn't seem to care, everybody's just kind of ho-humming around, and there seems no will to achieve or win or anything like that. What would you say to a player who finds themselves on a team that doesn't care?
Well, get off the team, obviously, if you can, depending on your contract. I mean, that's the easy one. But yeah, if it's like kind of the writing's on the wall that it's like kind of tanking, and you have to like get through the season, let's say, right? So what you want to do is thinking. I think this applies even if you're on a winning team. Is thinking about your mission. So first it's individual. I want to do well. Second, it's like I want my team to do well. And third, it's like I want baseball to do well. So that if I can maintain a sportsmanlike attitude in the midst of this horrific team, if I can every time at bat, like give it my best, give kudos to my players, my teammates, try to keep that positive vibe in the context of like my mission right now is to better baseball, and just like thinking about that mantra, like my mission is like to be the best player that I can, because people are watching you, fans are watching you. So that if you think about what was there's another quote from DiMaggio talking about, like, somebody asked him, how can you keep coming here and showing up every day and being so exceptional, and he said something along the lines of I just know that every game I'm at, there's a kid in the stands who's here for the first time watching his first baseball game, and he said I play for that kid. So that kind of a mentality, like more of a mission driven, like I'm here for a greater purpose. That can really be helpful when you're on a team like that, I think.
That's great.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you help guys find that mission and identify it and lay it out. Yeah.
Yeah. That's like one of the first things I do, actually, working with players and really in any sport. Like, what's your mission? Like, well, what do you mean? Well, like, people are watching you. Like, you want to contribute to the greater good of sports and be an example. Oh, I think about that sometimes. Like, you need to think about that every day. That really drives you. Like, that is such a deep motivator. I mean, it's almost like a religious kind of thing. Like, hey, my religion's baseball, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It's like what we ask people, what is your quest? So. What is your quest?
Yeah.
Right. That's our first question.
Yeah, the Church of Baseball with our
we
call it our baseball prayer.
Yeah.
Well,
Great.
Michael, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah.
That was fantastic. Another great conversation. We love it. Where can our people find you where can they catch the Sports Psychology Podcast?
Yeah. So you can just Google my name, which is Michael Ceely. Last name is spelled Ceely. And all my stuff will pop up, michaelceely.com. I'm on Instagram, Michael_Ceely. I do a lot of stuff there as well. So.
Yeah, for sure. Great follow.
Yeah, absolutely. Love it so much. But thank you so much again for joining us once again. Again, that's Michael Ceely.